Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Walworth. Welcome to Tech Tip Talk.
I'm Christina McGrath, and we are Knitting Tech Editors.
All right, so here on Tech Tip Talk, we answer your questions about tech editing, knitting design, and knitting pattern writing. We invite you now, if you have any questions, to throw it into the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. We want to let you know that today's broadcast is made possible by our most excellent patrons. If you are interested in being part of our network community, join us at patreon.com/TechTipTalk.
So this month we are chatting with Denise DeSantis, whom you may know as Earth Tones Girl. She is a knitting designer of socks, and we are always knitting on socks. She hosts a podcast and is the creator of the No Fear sock knitting classes. Denise has always inspired us with her calming, kind presence, and this is part of what makes her such an incredible teacher. She has unwavering faith in her students and in everyone's ability to learn and makes it all look easy. So we're really excited to talk socks and teaching hard things. So let's bring her in, Sarah.
All right, here we go. Add to stage and make you center. Hi, Denise.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you both, Christina and Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I am so happy to be here with you all today and with your viewers. Hello.
Yes, thanks for being here. We got Portland, Oregon, Virginia, upstate New York, and Minnesota so far. If you are watching live, we do invite you to put a comment in for Denise. We can see it all here. We love to hear what you guys have to say.
Wonderful. Hello, Jen.
Denise, you're going to get asked about the sewing machines behind you. We know.
I know.
No, well,
I'm ready.
That's coming up. We're going to get to that question, but
Let's
start at the beginning. So, well, I don't know. Maybe they go. Yeah. How did you get started working in the fiber arts industry?
That is a really good question. It wasn't really my intention to start working in the industry. I basically joined Instagram more to share quilting, interestingly enough. And I always knit. I've been knitting since 1999 and just started sharing. I mean, I feel like my quilting kind of petered out a little bit, but knitting was always there. And I started sharing knitting a lot more and it just grew. I feel like Instagram is so different when I joined many moons ago, maybe 6-7 years ago than it is now. I mean, it's so different. So it was a really different place to just chat with people. You know, you chatted with people on their posts and, you know, I was so drawn to it to see what was out there. What are people knitting? What techniques are out there? Because I learned before there was YouTube and Instagram and all of that. I mean, I learned from, you know, a book and, I think it just sort of organically, is that the expression? It just sort of grew on its own and here I am.
So here you are. So tell us a little bit about what you do. Like what is the space of Earth Tones Girl?
The space I like the way you phrase that. The space of Earth Tones Girl is to be a simple, inviting, welcoming place for knitters, specifically sock knitters, to come and learn at their own pace. My goal with everything that I do regarding teaching, my channel, everything is to share, number one, to share my excitement about knitting, because it's much more than a hobby for me. It's really, it sounds corny, but it is a bit of a lifestyle. And I do study knitting. It's not just, it's not whatever people are currently knitting. I mean, I've got, if you look just off camera right there, my shelves are starting to bow with all of the knitting reference books and really old ones. So I study knitting and I want to share that information because sometimes it's a little hard to field through all of that. So I sort of want to be the filter, I guess, to help knitters understand all the information that's out there, in particular relating to sock knitting.
So let's jump into what's behind you.
We met with Denise for a tech rehearsal and we saw those machines. We were like, This is going,
That
we're going
needs
to
to
talk
be the
about that.
background. So you mentioned quilting, but how has sewing impacted your life and your work as it is now?
My love of making started with sewing because my mother sewed from the time I could sit up and open my eyes. There was always a sewing machine going. It was sort of the background noise of my life. And I was always the one. I have a younger sister. She's 2 years younger, but I was always the one at my mom's elbow. What are you doing? How do you do that? And I was just mesmerized by the fabric going through the machine. I know that sounds really simple, but I was always fascinated. Like, aren't you afraid you're going to sew your fingers? And how does that work? And I wanted so desperately to learn what she was doing. And my mom rarely used a pattern. And I do think that was a huge influence even back then. I didn't realize it until present day. She tended to sew and to make the way she cooked, which is recipes and patterns were a suggestion. And she would kind of look over it and go, okay, yeah, well, that's interesting. Chuck it to the side and then do what she wanted to do.
Right.
And that has absolutely carried over hugely to my knitting. Not so much sewing, because I feel like sewing's a little bit more precise because I did quilting. So if you cut the fabric wrong, then oh dear, you've got to start over. And but Hot Yarn Andy, hi, it's nice to meet you all too. Hello, everybody. I can see the comments in the chat too. So, but in terms of knitting, the foundation for that independence was laid with my mother, but then it was fostered by my first knitting book, which was Knitting Without Tears by Elizabeth Zimmermans.
Me
I
too.
mention that all the time because that first book, that first impression was, you're in control of your knitting. You don't need to follow the rules. You create what you want to create, and you can figure that out. Once you have a foundation, there is no reason why you can't create whatever you want to create on your own terms. So
the ripple impacts of that book have just never stopped. I think it's created an entire couple generations of independent makers.
But I agree with you. I think, unfortunately, those generations have now sort of slowed down because you now have a new generation that is so much more relies so much more on visual.
Yeah.
So I think with Elizabeth Zimmerman's books, you had to sit there and really focus. You had to read pen and paper. You're doing math. You're figuring it all out. You're taking measurements, and that's not done as much anymore. Now it's more, tell me what to do, and I'm just going to do it. And I try very hard to bring people back to that. Why not learn? Let's learn together. I'm not just going to give you a sock. I want to teach you how to knit a sock.
It's excellent.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's talk about that. We have a couple questions kind of that follow that. So what do you love about sock knitting and designing? What is it that about socks that is like your thing that you're obsessed with, and like I don't think you'll ever stop?
So just for our audience sake, while we were chatting about 15 minutes before we went live, Denise cast on a new sock.
I did.
You want to show? There she goes.
A new to me technique. So I just thought, well, let's just start. Why not start? No note taking. I'm just kind of winging it. What do I love about sock knitting? I say this all the time. It is the perfect canvas to try just about anything in knitting. It is small. It is portable. For me, I find it a comfort. I sort of compare it to that glass of wine at the end of the day, or, I'm also a massage therapist in my past life, so I'm very tactile. I use my hands all the time. And some people find the rhythm of stockinette, for example, to be boring, but I find that rhythm so soothing. People say to me, oh, is knitting really as calming as they say? I'm like, not when you first start. No, it's not. No, it's not. Not when you start, but once you get into it, it's that comfort. It's always having it with me. And I love trying new techniques. I'm fascinated by how much I've learned and how much there still is to learn. And I can apply it in this tiny little wearable, humble little item of clothing.
Love it. So how has connecting with your makers influenced your designing? So you're not just sitting in your studio and creating socks for yourself and then plopping up a pattern and being done. You really connect with your makers. So tell us
Yeah.
about that.
I I think it's important for people, coming back to what I said before, I think it's really important for knitters, in particular sock knitters, to understand how things work, to understand the function of a sock, the structure of a sock, the architecture of a sock. So I try very hard to keep the makers, the sock knitters in mind when I design. I want to create a design that feels achievable for them, that feels doable for them, that feels user friendly, both in the way the pattern is written and in the simplicity of the design. So I feel like I'm catering to, not catering, I feel like I'm designing for the beginner, but also making things interesting for the more experienced knitter as well.
That makes
Well,
sense.
like you said, finding out what's important and then letting them know why it's important. And that can make
Exactly.
such a difference in your knitting, you know?
And why it's important, and also how to put it to the side if it just doesn't work for you. You know, I think that knitters feel, knitters in general, I know it's more about socks, but I think knitters in general feel like they have to follow a pattern exactly. And if I post on Instagram or wherever, or talk about it on YouTube, people want the exact yarn that I've knit with, the exact needle size that I've knit with. And I always stress that might not work for you. You know, it may not, what the formula I've created for myself and my feet or my making may not apply to you. The heel may not work for you. The question that I find fascinating is, well, how does that fit? How does that heel fit? I don't. I mean, I know how it fits me. I know
Right.
how structurally it's supposed to fit, but I can't tell you in an absolute that it will fit you perfectly, or that it
Right.
will accommodate your high arch, or if your foot tends to not have an arch, or if your foot is too wide, or I can't answer that question. And I think in this age of immediate response, you have to get it done now. There's no slow learning anymore. It has to be figured out in that quickly. Nobody's willing to let me knit the sock, knit the heel, see how it fits. Oh, maybe that doesn't work for me. Oh, I'll rip it out and start again. I think people would be less if you call them some derogatory term, they would be less insulted than if you tell them to rip out their work and start again. And I try to stress it's okay. It's okay. How many things in life do you get to do over?
Ripping is the best part sometimes. We
It
get to
is the best part.
redo.
Just redo. And then when you do redo, the result can be so much better. So why not redo? But again, it's people feel this need with social media these days to produce as quickly as possible. You know, I've got to
Like
get another
instant
pair of
gratification, like
instant,
right
instant.
now. Yeah.
Right now. I need it done right now. And then they compare themselves. You have a lot of newer knitters, newer sock knitters, comparing themselves to more experienced knitters that can produce socks a little quicker. It's not that they're necessarily producing socks faster to impress anyone or to show off. It's just they've got a skill. So it's pre-programmed. They don't have to stop and think about it. You know what I mean? And I think that that's Jerry Riggs. Hi, Jerry. How are you?
Hey, Jerry.
It's been a while. Hi there, my friend. As you knit, so shall ye rip. Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly, Jerry. And I know you. I know that expression from you from the past. So absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think empowering your students to rip it out and not like that's okay is a huge part of it, right?
It's huge. It's huge. It's really okay to rip things out and to start again. And so what if you don't put in a lifeline? Just do it again. It's okay.
Well, I have a little bit of a question on a tangent on what you said, where you're designing with the beginner in mind. how do you create your patterns, or do you do tutorials, or do you, like, what do you do to keep that beginner in mind, but also still serve a more advanced knitter? Like, how do you do that technically in your pattern?
Hmm. It's interesting. The way you're asking your questions are so unique. I've never been asked in that way to think that way, which is really great. Um,
Well, and the reason why I ask is
Go ahead.
pattern writing for socks is different than pattern writing for, say, a shawl or
Absolutely.
a sweater. So you're talking about creating at the cuff, if you're doing cuff down, and then
Mhm.
turning that corner. So do you break your patterns up, or do you add notes, or how do you,
I think
what have you found works for you?
I think creating I tend to get excited. So the process for me is I will discover something, or find a new to me heel. Let's start with that. And I get so excited about this heel. Then I think, how can I teach how this heel works? How do you knit this heel? So I will share that. Then I think, how can I incorporate that into into a vanilla sock? So you do still get the joy of the sock, but the fun part is the heel, or the fun
Mm.
part is the toe, or so it's putting, in my mind, the way I'm thinking of it is, I've got this really exciting bit that I'm going to put into the vanilla. So it's the vanilla ice cream and then whatever your toppings are.
Oh, I love it.
So whatever toppings you like, I'm gonna be as creative as I possibly can with those toppings. But in my case, it would be a heel or a toe or a particular design or something like that. So I
Sarah,
think I answered the question.
since we're talking about pattern writing and just being a sock knitter, like from a
Mhm.
really long time ago, right? And I just kind of make the same sock over and over again. And so I've noticed, I started tech editing, like sock patterns now. You can knit socks two at a time. You can knit them on two circulars. You can knit the magic loop. You can do them on DPNs. But so patterns now, it's like, do you write the pattern specific to a needle
Mhm.
type, or do you ignore all of that and like not say knit to the end of the needle? Or how do you
I
approach
ignore
writing
all of
sock
that.
patterns with all those different methods that could be involved?
I ignore all of the methods.
Oh, I love that.
Wow.
I think it
I
Okay.
love
makes
that.
it doesn't some people will write for a technique.
Right.
Totally fine. Absolutely. Yay them. I think it works, in my mind, better to, again, give someone a recipe, then they can apply that recipe to whatever technique that they want.
Mhm.
So do you cook your chicken in an air fryer, or do you use a frying pan?
This week
It,
it's air fryer.
right, well, right. And some prefer the air fryer, and I might prefer the frying pan. So it's, here's the chicken recipe. It will work in all of the different ways. You go and experiment and see what works for you.
Right.
I personally am not a fan of the 9-inch needles, which are very, very popular. I wish that I were.
Me too,
Hurts my
but they cramp
hands.
my
My
hands.
hands cannot, they just can't. I'm old and my hands start screaming. They're like, "No,
Yeah,
no, no."
can't do
Um,
it.
I can't do it either. And I've really tried, but I find I need something for the rest of my hand to rest on,
Yeah, same.
which isn't there. And doing this, the pain just shoots right through the back of my hand. It just doesn't work. So do I then, plus I also find it limiting. If I write a pattern for just one specific group or method, what if somebody else really likes it, but then I have to write it again for them, and then write it again, and then write it again. But if I teach people how to apply it no matter what your technique is, then it speaks to everyone.
So needle agnostic.
Yes.
Like
I
there's
love
no,
that.
like
There is
you,
the word needle agnostic. I love that.
Well,
you're
in sock patterns specifically, there often are directions that are like,
right.
you know,
Yes.
knit to 2 stitches before the end of the needle, or
Mhm.
place a marker. There's a lot of references to needles
Yeah.
in a
Yeah,
lot of
and
sock
it's
patterns.
interesting. The biggest observation that I've made with that, I tend to, so I've got this sock in progress right now,
Ooh,
and
so pretty.
here's the beginning of the round. So right now, I'm going to just turn it for a second. My yarn is right in position to start the next round or next half, but my tail is over here. So to me, I'm on the second needle and this is the first. So, but when you read a pattern, it's the other way around. So people will tell you knit across the first needle and then start your heel on the second needle. In my mind, I'm thinking, why not just start it at the beginning of the round, which would then be needle 1, which is completely opposite of what most patterns I've seen tell you to do. And I tell people all the time, unless you are working in a specific pattern, specifically color work, it doesn't matter. But that's it's such a it's a rule that people feel is so hard and fast. They cannot. No, 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 no. I have to start. The heel has to be on needle 2. I'm like, you know what? Then do it on needle 2. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter. I always start mine at the beginning of the row. But again, that comes with experience and knowing it's not going to matter. I've had socks where my heel is on one side and the other heel is on the other side because of where the pattern repeat was in a striping yarn.
And it was just the best place to put it.
And it was the best place to put it, but no one will know. If you look at those 2 socks, they match perfectly. No one will know that I started one on needle 1 and one on needle 2, or vice versa. It just doesn't matter.
And just a shout out, I feel like you're a compatriot to me, is you're using 2 needles.
Yeah.
So
That's what Sarah does.
is it Kat Bordy's technique? Is that who you learned from?
God bless Kat Bordy. I learned to knit in 1999, and I went to a store up in Poughkeepsie, New York that is not there anymore. I went to the book section and there was Kat Bordy's book.
Oh.
Brand spanking new. I have a first edition of it sitting on the shelf, and I thought, what is this? It just clicked. It made sense that you divide by 2. And I just started, and I remember sending her an email somewhere. I don't know, a message somehow. I contacted her and I said, oh my goodness, can't this be applied to sweaters? Can you do sleeves and sweaters and anything, hats? Can you do anything? And her response was, yes, you can. And I said, well, could you wouldn't it be possible to like make a book about that? And she's like, well, if you can ask the question, you can figure it out.
Oh, see, there it
and
is.
I thought, now, just if I said, if people got that response now, they would be insulted or think she was being rude. And
that makes me sad.
They would think she was being rude. And well, that's not fair. You're the teacher. You should teach the technique. And I'm going, no, thank you for that push to do it myself, which circles right back to Kat Bordy, Elizabeth Zimmerman, Barbara Walker, Mary Thomas, all of those greats that are like, here's the information. Go on, little ones, figure it out for yourself.
I love that. If you can, let's repeat that again. If you can ask the question, you can figure it out. That's really empowering.
That's what I try very hard to do with my students. And I've actually, once or twice, I've actually had people say to me, oh, Denise, I thought you seem so nice on your video. And the response that they got from me asking a question wasn't what they wanted. Because they want me to just write
fill in the blank.
Them. Just, fill in the blank. I don't need to talk about it. Just give it to me because that's what I want.
But it obviously has empowered some of your audience, because here we go. I learned to knit socks with Denise's video tutorial. I've knit 80 pairs. 80
oh my gosh!
So there is some empowerment happening here.
Absolutely. Okay, how do you Alaska? Oh dear, I know I'm saying that wrong.
Alaxia.
I am applauding you. Absolutely applauding you. Well done.
So part of what you do is you empower the makers to think, to make choices. So what are some of your other secrets for teaching hard things? Like turning certain heels is just a little bit mind-bending.
Well, yes, you have to knit slowly. And Please don't laugh. I am a bit of a geek uh,
Alaksha.
Alaksha. Okay, Alaksha.
So
Thank
pretty.
you.
Oh my
Thank you.
gosh.
So
Beautiful
pretty.
name.
Thank you for that clarification. Don't laugh at this, but I am a huge sci-fi movie fantasy geek fan. And I heard a phrase in the movie Dune last year, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, yes, this is the phrase that I never knew I always needed. Fear is the mind killer."
Oh,
And
Wow.
if you think you are supposed to be socks are so scary. I can't knit socks. They're so hard. They're so scary. I'm afraid. I'm terrified. I'm so scared. Come on. I mean, I'm more afraid, honestly, to like, I don't know, cross the street and go pick my kids up. You know what I mean? There's so many things out there in life that are so much scarier. Knitting a sock should not be anywhere near that list. It should not even be on the list.
People just get like blocks in their brains about things.
They
It's kind of like
do.
you get this like first impression or this thought, and it stops you from realizing that you can learn it or you can do it.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just, things were I also believe in a verbal tradition. So you learned from the elders. You learned from people
mhm.
in your home, in your tribe, in your village, in wherever. Things weren't written down. So you sat at your grandmother's knee and you watched and you learned. And that's what I try to do in my videos. I really want just don't be afraid. What is there to be afraid of? And again, at least sock yarn, if you pull this out, you can use it again. It's not like
Yes.
quilting. It's not like sewing when you cut the fabric and you're like, "Oh, now back
That's
to the
that.
fabric store. I
It's a
have to
water, throw it in the trash.
throw it in the trash or make scrappy something." But with
Mhm.
yarn, you can just do it again. Just do it again. So I'm so grateful that when I heard that phrase, it's people, they're getting in their own way, really.
So
I
you're just
love what you
inspiring designers too. Liz says, "You're so interesting to me because I'm always trying to figure out how much instructional detail to put into my patterns." I love what you're saying.
Yeah. Because honestly, patterns can look like War and Peace
and be a
and,
stick.
and be a stick. If you put in every technique that a person might or could or may be helpful in whatever you're designing, whether that's a sweater, a classic Fair Isle Icelandic sweater, that pattern can be this big.
Mhm.
I think it's up to the knitter whether it's something as complicated as a Fair Isle sweater, true Fair Isle, or as simple as a sock. Just learn how to do it, learn the different techniques, try it on something smaller, and then go for it.
What you said about going slow really
Mm.
resonates with me.
Mhm.
Knitting will never be a fast sport.
No,
I
no.
mean, we do have people in our community who knit very fast.
Yes.
They're very skilled at that. But for most of us, this is something we need to take our time with. And it's kind of in contrast to everything else happening in the world where
Yes.
everything's speeding up and getting faster and faster, and we get to slow down. I think that's really valuable.
I agree. I completely agree. I'm a little late. Oh, hi, Alec. How are you? Glad you're here. I
Well,
so
it's
knitting
refreshing to hear
slowly.
you say this because the patterns nowadays definitely help the knitter a lot more than they used to. So you're right that there's a lot more teaching happening in patterns, and we talk about this a lot.
Mhm.
And it's a way to make things accessible, but
Right.
you're right that it's also a way to like it puts like less in the knitter's hands to decide for themselves.
Exactly, and I also think it potentially, just my opinion, I do think it puts more of a burden on the designer
Oh yeah, well it
Yeah.
definitely
and
does.
opens the designer up to potential criticism because, "Well, I learned that you can do the technique this way. Why didn't you include that in your pattern? You said to do it this way, but it can be done this way. Don't you think both techniques should be in the pattern?" Oh, good gracious.
Well,
Again,
then it's never ending.
it's
Like,
never
Yeah, it
ending.
just goes on and
Because
on.
especially with sock pattern, like, you could
exactly.
do what of 10 different kinds of heels? Do you put them in every pattern or
Right. Right. And, because again, the big question that I get is, will this work for me? I have a high arch or I have a high instep. Again, I don't know. I will teach you how to substitute a heel so that you can try it yourself. But
Mm.
we circle back to the beginning where people don't want that. And that burden then falls to the designer. And again, patterns are getting more and more involved, more and more I think there's too much information. I mean, I just downloaded a pattern, for example, yesterday, and I'm reading it, and it is there's so much going on in there. And I'm thinking you could have eliminated 50% of what's in here.
Mm.
Like, people don't need all of this, and then it feels confusing because now you're giving the knitter maker more options, and then they still don't know what to do because they've got too many options.
Mm.
It's
So maybe
difficult. The
save that
option thing
for
is oh,
Sorry.
no, save that for more advanced patterns, maybe where
Right.
or recipe patterns or those kind of things.
yeah, and having a lot of options isn't always necessary. Like every pattern doesn't have to be everything to everybody. It can
Exactly.
just be this one thing,
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I think a lot, knitters are learning differently now, like you were explaining. They're learning by watching videos on TV and not as much from a person or like you said before.
Right.
So there's a lot more teaching and patterns, and then it does get a little unwieldy.
Mhm. I mean, Alex says in the comment, she says, "Yes," and then people complain that patterns are way too long, and oh, hi, Valerie. Hi there. It's a sock pattern, not a buffet. Oh my gosh, I love that. It's true. It's absolutely positively true. I'm trying to I'm currently working on a new DK weight sock pattern.
Mhm.
And hi Jen, wink wink. And it doesn't have to be, it can't have everything. It can't
Mm.
have everything. And people also ask me, well, are you going to do a toe up version? There's so many patterns when I first learned to knit socks that were toe up, that had designs in them that I was madly in love with, but they were toe up. And I thought, okay, can I just knit the pattern in reverse?
Yes.
So I literally would just start at the end and flip the charts upside down and just keep going.
Mhm.
Wait, what are you doing? Wait, what is what are you doing? What is that? What do you mean? And why not?
Mhm.
Why not? Just flip it. But
Yeah.
I wasn't told, but no one told me how to do that. No one told me to do that. Is that
Mhm.
okay?
Yes.
I think
So
it's one more thing that you get locked in. You know how like lots of times everybody is gonna like everybody wants the sweater in the picture color that it is in the pattern,
Yes.
right? We
Yes.
all want the pink sweater. We can't envision that it might be blue or yellow or brown or whatever. You've got to
Mhm.
have that. So it's the same thing. It's like you look at the pattern and you can't even think past what's there. And it's sometimes like the simplest thing. If someone like says what you just said, you go, "Oh my god!" Like I didn't even think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. They didn't and it's okay that they didn't think about it because not everybody's brain works the same way.
right.
And
But
I
that's why it's so valuable teaching this way. People can you can like this, we've said it now 20 times, but empowering people to realize that they can make these decisions and change things that they want that work better for them.
exactly, exactly. And Sarah mentioned earlier that some patterns can be kind of mind-bending, and it's the most complicated heel I've ever knit was by Lara Neal, and it basically had two gussets in the
Mhm.
heel. It looked like it's like nothing I'd ever seen, and I waited till the kids went to bed. I waited till my husband went to bed. I was sitting at the dining room table all by myself. Everything was off, and I thought, "Okay, let's go."
I love it.
All right, let's just try this one step at a time. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning by the time I was done, and I'm like, "There's no one here to share my excitement." But I had done it. I had done it, and I trusted that the pattern was correct.
Mhm.
and it worked. And I've also knit on patterns, for example, that had a mistake in them. And as a new knitter, I am struggling. I'm like, but my numbers aren't working. Like, is it me? And I'm sweating and I'm crying and I can't figure this out. And I remember calling, I won't name the company, but I do remember calling the company and saying, I'm sorry, but I really humbly, head bowed, really think there may be a mistake in this because it's just, it doesn't work. And the response was, yeah, there's a mistake in it. And I thought,
No.
so you know that. I said, so you know that, but you didn't put in any errata anywhere or corrections anywhere or any, and they're like, well, people will just kind of figure it out. And I said, okay.
Now that kind of figuring out is not for the maker.
Dude, that's irresponsible. I can't, we can't get behind that.
I can't. And I mean, again, that's why I'm not saying the name of the company, but I was so angry. And I thought, do you understand that as a brand new knitter, do you know the mental torture that you just put me through trying to figure this out, and how I'm going to figure it out because now I see it as a challenge. That's my personality. But there's many people out there would just give up and not knit anymore. And they've now
and
lost
not knit any more of your patterns for sure.
of your patterns or patterns in general, because knitting's too hard. It's got to, the mistake has to be the knitter's mistake. So they're going to just stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, because in that situation, the knitter is of course they messed it up.
Right.
They can't do it. They're not gonna go, oh, this is a bad pattern.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I swore, I was like, I will never touch your patterns again.
Well, that's really dismissive too.
It was dismissive, and they were well aware. They were well aware.
Wow.
But
That's,
you know.
so part of teaching hard things is making sure your instructions are correct. So you work with the tech editor, correct?
I do. I do. Who happens to be here?
Jen is here. I love it.
We love Jen.
Hi, Jen.
So maybe this is a good segue into the next question. So what advice would you give a designer just starting out? Obviously, get a tech editor so your patterns are correct.
Get a tech editor if your patterns are correct. But I also understand that there are, and this is really important, I do understand that there are many socioeconomic issues why not everybody can get a tech editor. For lots of reasons. And what do you do in that case? And I think if you can't, for various reasons, hire a tech editor, I would suggest getting your circle of friends, your circle of making friends, or create that circle of making friends on social media, pull people into your group and say, look, I really want to get this pattern out there. I have some limitations. Who can help me? And have those people, as many people as you can, knit the pattern for you and read it through. Does it make sense for a new knitter? Because I think sometimes when you're a little more experienced, you assume things in your pattern, like, oh, they'll know what to do there. You know what I mean? And your brain is saying, well, that makes sense. But to a newer knitter, they're not going to get it. And if you can't have a tech editor, having other people knit for you and giving you feedback, I think is definitely a way to go.
Even I think maybe someone who is not going to knit it, who's just going to read it through and let you know if those instructions make sense.
If they make sense. Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, there would be a whole section that's missing and you assume someone will understand. And you're like, but you didn't say anything about winding the yarn first. I mean, I'm just using that as an example. You know what I mean? But yeah. So I think that's important.
So how many years have you been designing?
4?
4?
Yeah.
Well, not that long then.
Not long.
You've been a maker a lot longer than that.
Right.
A lot longer. I can hear her sitting on my shoulder right now telling me, don't say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I almost don't consider myself a designer. I think of myself as a knitting enthusiast that wants to share an idea with people.
You're an enabler.
I'm an enabler, but in a good way, because it's, the patterns are simple. And there's a lot of things in knitting that it's already been done. Like, nobody owns a vanilla sock.
Mm.
Mhm.
You know, you can maybe take 5 years trying to figure out who knit the first one, but there's very little that's original in knitting. So I'm giving you, again, I go back to the word recipe. I'm giving you a recipe or a concept with this particular heel or cast on or whatever, because I like it, it works, I think aesthetically it may be beautiful and I want to share that. And then here you go.
Mhm.
You know, and then there's also a lot of knitters that will not charge for patterns. They want to do it for, they give their patterns away for free, but I feel, and that's fine. I don't know. I think if you've taken the time to create something, even though it's basic, you should still value the time that you've put in.
Yeah.
So, you know, that, and that's because I also think sometimes then that there's the potential to maybe even undermine other designers out there. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Definitely,
Sure.
it is.
Yeah.
It is undermining other designers, and you are doing the work too. And if you're not, if you're doing all this work, you're being very careful, even if, as you say, you've not invented it from the ground up, right? Like this sock exists, but you're writing the pattern in such a way that you're doing all these things we've been talking about, teaching your audience and empowering them and all these things.
Mhm.
That's work that you've
Right.
done.
Right.
And the way that you're delivering it and the product you're putting out is valuable.
Correct. Now,
So
to comment on, because Alec just said in the comments, she said, "Please get a tech editor if you charge for your patterns. They are pricey in her part of the world, and it's frustrating when they are wrong, or at least use a pattern tester group." You can get a tech editor, you can have a pattern testing group, um, you can have the best of the best look your pattern over, and there could still be a mistake in it.
Oh,
There
it's true.
there can still be a mistake, and while I absolutely 100% understand, sorry, I'm sliding. While I can absolutely understand that request, it's not, I think there should be some allowance for the fact that that is just not always possible.
So, yeah, so own your mistakes then and fix it,
Exactly,
right?
exactly,
Put
100%.
out an errata page.
If someone calls you out and says there's a mistake, you go back and you look diligently, or you retest it, you reknit it, whatever, and you're like, "Oh, there it is. I'm so, so sorry."
mhm,
You do the update, and then you send the update out to people. So I
Mhm.
think it's and that's happened. That's absolutely happened to me
Yeah.
where my
It
numbers were
happens to
off.
every designer.
Every designer, my number was off by 1.
Mm.
Now, in my mind, okay, just ignore the 1, but that's not what, as a new knitter, that's not fair, which goes back to my
Mhm.
experience. I will 100% edit that, send that out as an updated pattern and let people know,
yeah.
you
I mean,
know?
that's what the right thing to do. You're
Exactly.
you're saying to the people who are buying your pattern, "This is what you're gonna get. This is what this is." And if they follow your instructions faithfully, they should get the thing. So if there's an issue with your instructions, you absolutely have to say, "Here's the fix for that." Yeah.
Right. Mhm.
Mhm. And
There's the
luckily, we live in an age, I mean, this is not
Oh,
1995
I know. So
where
cool, right?
we can publish
Yes.
errata and an update to
Mhm.
a pattern via email pretty quickly.
Right.
It
Which may be
doesn't
why this other pattern company didn't put out any errata in
Mhm.
hindsight, because how do you know if your pattern is being sold in 50 yarn shops across the US
in a printed form.
in a
Yeah.
printed form? How do you get updates to that person?
Right.
It's
Yeah. It's tricky. Do you
exactly.
think, Denise, that there is space in the industry now for new designers?
Absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely. But I
mm,
also think what's important is for established voices to share those people.
mm,
It's not a responsibility.
Mm.
I think it will help. And I know that that was a big part of me becoming known. There were people that had been in the business for a little while that shared what I was doing, that introduced me to people, that brought me in with them. And I do think that's important. And there's a lot that goes into that because you don't always know everybody's background. So you may like who are you really supporting? Who are you promoting? But if there's a pattern out there that I find riveting, or wow, have you seen this? Send it out there. It's not about, and this is so, it bugs me too, that it's not about the numbers. I'm not on Instagram or YouTube or anywhere to build my numbers. I genuinely don't care. Like, I really don't. While I do have a respectable following, it's that those numbers don't matter to me. So I don't mind stepping away for a week and I don't have to explain where I've been, or I don't post for a couple of days. I've seen people apologize. Oh, I'm sorry. I was gone for a couple of
We didn't notice.
We didn't notice. Like, genuinely didn't notice. But sorry, I digress. But I mean, if I see a designer and I really think their work is fantastic, I won't necessarily just buy the pattern and do it myself. I'm going to put them in my stories. I'm going to knit their pattern and put it in my feed so that it's there, So I think that's important.
Well, that's a
Love that.
way to, like, it's a big way. Like you said, you have a respectable following, right? So for somebody who doesn't have that, it's such a way to be supportive and helpful. And it's not hard.
It's not.
It's not hard.
It's really, really not. And it's not a competition. And I feel like sometimes there, again, it sounds a little corny, but there's room for everybody at the table.
Absolutely.
Whenever, and this is probably true in everything in life, but I think so much of the reason sometimes that we feel we have to compete, or that we can't share information, or we can't anything, is this fear that doing that is going to take something precious away from us.
Yes.
That we're going to somehow lose something by doing that. And like literally the opposite is true, you know?
That's very true. It really is. And it's so interesting because I've seen friendships and relationships and things go astray because of either this little unspoken competition, or there's I don't even know how it starts. It's sort of like you're both doing the same thing and you both love the same thing. And then all of a sudden you start kind of like, oh, wait, can I get ahead? And oh, wait, can I get ahead? And well, what is she doing? Well, let me see if I can do that too. And then you're like, wait, how did this happen? Is this necessary? Why are we doing this? So it really doesn't take much. It does not take much to be kind. And I think that message is sometimes lost.
And I think in the history of our craft, innovation doesn't necessarily happen in isolation. So like even, Kat Bordy creating what was new to us with the, knitting 2 socks on 2 circulars. What if she just kept that to herself?
Right.
Like, what does that do? In fact, what that's done is that the innovation begets innovation, but it's partly because of how we share and how we build up one another.
I agree 100%. I mean, when I learned Kat Bordy's method of 2 socks at 2 at a time, I always separated, for example, to do the heels, and then I'd rejoin. And someone said, no, you can do a heel flap and gusset 2 at a time. No, you can't. I was like, you can't do that. That's just how would you do? I couldn't get my brain around how to do that. So now, rather than, which again, we're circling back to empowering, I said, let's go down the rabbit hole then. I'll take the bait. I will go. And I searched and dug and searched and dug, and I found tutorials, but some of them weren't really clear, but I learned how to do it, so.
Yeah, it's possible. It's a little fiddly.
Well, sometimes there's just a little piece missing that you're not getting.
Right,
so
exactly.
It's not a whole great lesson. Like if you can see what that piece that you missed, and then it can click.
But you know what? It's funny, Sarah. You say it's fiddly, and I thought it was at first. Since learning, I actually used to turn my sock when I did a heel flap and gusset from front to back to profile, and then I'd switch it back.
Right, where you move the beginning of the round to the back of the heel.
To the back of the heel.
Right.
You
don't have to do that.
You don't have to. And I thought that was the only way. It was an absolute. You had to do it that way. And when I learned that you didn't, I was like, look, everybody, look what you can do. And I really do get ridiculously excited. I almost laugh at myself because it's like, all right, just calm down. It's only a sock, calm down.
Nah, come
Look at
on.
it. Look what you can do. Like, it's just, oh my gosh. It's just fascinating that it's just about 2 sticks and a piece of string, but look at what you can create.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
Like,
Or 4 sticks and 2
Or-
pieces of string
or
or
one
whatever.
long stick or whatever it is, or multiple pieces of string, whatever
Yeah,
it
I
is.
think farther back up, Victoria mentioned needle neutral instead of needle agnostic is a way that we can talk about
I
it
like
too.
needle neutral. I think that
Needle
might
neutral.
to more.
Well, it's a mouthful, but I think it's a
Yeah,
better way of
needle
talking
neutral.
about it.
Absolutely.
I don't move around to the back of the heel either. I actually never understood that. It puts like a gap in your, but it also, if everything you're doing on a sock is happening at each end, why does the beginning of the round need to be back here? Like, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, it's just because that's what was done and you
Right.
shifted it. So, but it doesn't have to be.
So tell us what's going on for you now. What are you excited about now? What have you got going on?
What have I got going on is my I Love Books and Sock Knitting Cal. That
All right.
is really, really big. I am always glued to an audiobook. I'm always listening to a book. And I thought there's got to be others out there doing this or
Yep.
reading.
Me right here.
Yeah, or physically reading and knitting if you are so skilled. And
Do you know how to physically read and knit? Can you
Yes, I do.
so all right. So this is truly reading,
it's
not
truly,
watching your hands.
right. It's truly not watching your hands. But I always have an audiobook in my ear, so I can just go. And I thought, well, why not? Like the hubbub and crazy of the holiday season is now over. We're not quite at the summer season where things kind of just get quiet. Like, let's do something really fun for spring. And here we are. And it's been really fun. It started on March 1st. It runs until May 1st. And it's just been a delight. Like, it's just blown me. The response has blown me away. I am so enjoying it. I've created a Ravelry group.
Alex says it's very fun so far.
Glad. Oh, hi. Ladine? I think I'm saying that. Sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses. Thank you.
Oh, Ladidi.
I couldn't make sense of the back of the back in the middle of the heel. Yeah, it's
It's like, why did we do that?
Why did we do that? Because, well, again, it's because it's this is how you made bread. You pounded the wheat and you made the bread. So everybody makes their bread the same way until somebody comes along and goes, no, you don't have to do it that way. There's other options.
That's what I figured out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the Cal runs until May 1st, and people are sharing what they are reading and what they're knitting. And I put in this fun little option. It's not a requirement, but this fun little option to maybe match your book cover with your yarn.
Ooh.
And that's been really fun. So it's really been a good one. And people are already asking if I'm going to do this again next year. I'm like, well, I don't see why not. So it's just been really fun. And my new pattern should be out mid-April. So keep an eye out for that. So
can you give us a little sneak peek of new pattern or talk about it? Or is it secret sauce?
No. It's not secret at all. Let me just make it look a little more appealing. Hang on a second. Hold on. So it is this, and this has a little hook. That's why it kind of looks like that. But it is a DK weight vanilla sock. The big thing is I included a shadow wrap short row heel.
Oh, that's my one I want to try next. I was just talking about that last week with
someone. Well, Christina, you got your pattern, April.
It's coming out in April.
DK socks are fast.
I know, that's so good.
Shockingly fast. Like it's interesting because we talked about hands hurting, I think before we went live, and the bigger the needles, the more my hands, I can feel it in my hands. So I do tend to prefer smaller needles, but it's so incredible how
What needle size did you use?
3, so a US 3, which is 3.25. So this is the full length version. There is also a shorty version, which I will
I love that.
Pop on the blocker for you to see. And within the pattern, there will also be an explanation of how to customize the shadow wrap heel depending on the weight yarn you're using.
Nice.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That is the shorty version.
All
Oh,
right,
that's so
so
cute.
I'm gonna get technical on you, Denise.
Oh, which way am I going? I'm trying to get my camera.
Nice.
Yes, so here we go. Yes, technical. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when you get asked by those of us with a high arch,
Mm-hmm.
is the shadow wrap heel or the short row heel or whatever just not appropriate for us? Or do you have tricks like the choosing to do a gusset, or what do you do?
What I suggest incorporating Mina Phillip, who is the knitting expat.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah.
He is an incredible designer, and she created the mini heel flap adjustment. So that is part of one of her patterns. And I tell people that do have that say they have a high instep, that if you incorporate that heel flap adjustment with a short row heel, it gives you just enough extra
Over
room
the top of the foot.
over the top of the foot, because it literally is a mini heel flap that, and she pairs it with German short rows.
Mhm.
I just paired it with
With the
shadow
shadow
wrap.
wrap.
Shadow wrap short rows.
Thank you for solving my problems.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. So yeah, that is so this will be out, like I said, unless there's any major glitch, it will be out in mid-April.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
So, the question that we ask all of our guests that we love to get the answer on is, what is your favorite knitting or crochet notion? And it's fast. Oh, here she comes.
Ta-da!
Fix it tool.
Fix
It
it.
is, yes, it is Susan Bates' little handy tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one of these everywhere. I have actually gone out with one tucked behind my ear.
Yes. Same.
Because I'm working on something and I'll tuck it back there and forget it's there. It's very easy to lose things in my hair. So
Tuck it in my watch band.
yeah, ooh, that's a good one. I didn't think to do that. So I use this, and I also use can't knit without. I also always, most of the time, have a progress keeper.
Now, what do you use that for? I 1000% have never understood the point of that. I don't use them. Tell me all about it. Tell me about it.
It just helps me remember how many rows I've completed. It really does keep track of your progress. Stitch markers are more little loops that you can put right on the needle, like between the stitches.
Right.
With this, I know that where that marker, that progress keeper is right now, I've completed 50 rounds.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's a
how you're
lobster
using
claw?
it.
It's a lobster claw. Let's see, let me bring it a little this way. Okay.
Gotcha. So you're
Yeah.
using it like to mark places in the pattern, like
There you go.
mile markers. Like,
Exactly. That's exactly
Gotcha.
what it is. So it's a little lobster claw, and I made this one myself. It's just got a little bead, and I do sell these in my shop.
so
And
Books
you
and
know,
sock
yeah,
knitting.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yay.
and this is actually the progress keeper for the cowl. So there it. Wait, I'm trying to get the glare off of it so you could see it a little bit
That's
better.
fine.
And again, every time if I knit, so I'm up to around 50. So for this particular sock, I'm going to 50 to 60, and I'll just move it up. Just keep shifting it. Some people
So like every 10
every 10, maybe every
rounds.
5. Yeah. And if I might also leave it in place when I start the heel, so that I know where I've started the heel, or just make a little note to myself.
Mhm.
I tend
At the
to
back
make
of the heel.
at the back of the heel. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
love
Motivation
it.
markers.
Yeah.
Crafty Gemini says she has the same tool.
Oh, Melissa, hello.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited to see you here.
I'm so glad you're here. Hello, my friend.
So, and Alex says there's a small crochet hook for a keychain.
There is. These do come on a keychain.
Yeah, those are definitely something I probably need.
have
But then
to
I'm not
think
going to go
about
find
that,
my
but I have
keys when I'm
seen
sitting
them.
in my chair.
Sorry?
I'm not going to go find my keys when I'm sitting in my chair, but it would definitely go in my car project bag.
Yeah. So these, I always have these with me in project bags and things like that. So yeah.
Super exciting. So, where can people find you online?
I am on Instagram, as I am across all the social medias as Earth Tones Girl. And you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Ravelry. That's basically, yeah, that's where
So I
Love
put
it.
in the comments, and we'll put it down below too when the video is permanently placed. But I put your Instagram and I put about the cowl and your stitch markers,
great. Thank you.
so people can jump over there and look. So awesome.
Yay,
And
wonderful.
I will
And here's the
just,
YouTube too.
yeah, and I will absolutely say the same thing. Thank you for sharing your design wisdom with us, Denise. We really
Oh,
do appreciate you
thank
being with
you.
us.
Thank you
Um,
so much for having me. It's been really, really fun. Thank you. It's so
It's
good
like
to
a
see you
dream to me to
too.
have you on talking with us. I'm so happy to have you on.
Yay, yay. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. This was just
fun.
wonderful.
Thanks for being here, and we'll see you around. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you to everyone who
Denise.
joined
Bye,
in.
Denise.
Thanks, everyone.
So that was fun. Thanks everyone for joining us live. We super appreciate you all. Thank you for being here. If you are interested in joining our community of designers and tech editors, please come join us on Patreon. That's who makes this whole broadcast possible. Our patrons are excellent, and we run a very active community on Disc. Well, not super active today, but yeah,
Because we're all here.
we're all here. But we get in there and people can ask questions about their projects, share comments, and get help with specific topics, plus share our cooking and other exciting things.
Yeah,
We'd
we
love
have
to
a lot
see you
going
there.
on. This is good, and it's a really good group.
And it starts at $5 a month, and you can, at $10 a month, you can have 2 monthly knit nights with us. It's a lot of fun. And please subscribe here for getting notifications on YouTube when we go live. And also, you can sign up for our newsletter.
Well, and just about like that relates to our interview. When you sign up for the newsletter, you get a free pre-edit pattern checklist that we've written for designers. And that's one more way, if you're not able to hire help with your pattern, you can go through your pattern with that checklist and go over your work slowly, and you'll eliminate a lot of errors that way.
And last but not least, go buy our book. If you are a knitting designer, we have written the book on how to write a great pattern for your makers. And you can find that at the link below. And we'd love to get your input on it. Feel free to share with us your takeaways from reading our text. We also do offer style sheet expert advice and sizing charts for all of the different types of bodies.
That's what I was going to say. There's all that stuff about pattern writing and a lot of resources for you also.
So thanks for being here. We'll be back again next month, third Monday at noon here on our channel, and we'll see you guys then.
Bye,
Thanks for
everybody.
being here. Bye. And thanks to our patrons.